5 Sinister True Stories of Haunted Homes. Discover the spine-chilling secrets you never expected. Sarah thought she had finally found the perfect sanctuary. The charming colonial-style house in a sleepy New Jersey suburb offered space and a new beginning for her and her kids, 10-year-old Emma and 6-year-old Jake. With every step they took inside, she felt relief wash over her, like stepping into the warm embrace of freedom. But as twilight fell, the cozy warmth morphed into an unsettling chill. Shadows danced along the walls, creeping with an ominous presence lurking just out of reach. Days folded into nights. Strange sounds echoed through the house, soft whispers that seemed to curl around her, suffocating her thoughts. Doors creaked, though she had locked them tight. Objects shifted, leaving her questions hanging in the air. Maybe it was just her overworked mind, she told herself. The stress of escaping an abusive relationship had taken its toll. Yet, as each uncanny night settled, her relief waned, replaced by a creeping dread that curled like a serpent around her heart. One evening, Sarah overheard Jake giggling in the living room, and a chill scuttled down her spine. "Charlie, you're so funny," he exclaimed, laughter echoing down the hall. Goosebumps pricked her skin as his voice grew animated. Who was Charlie? Panic seized her as Jake mentioned things he couldn't possibly know, whispered details of the house. The garden. "Mom, Charlie says he likes the basement." Her heart raced, panic sweeping over her like an icy wave. This wasn't normal. It was dangerous. Stopping to catch her breath, she searched the room for answers, but the only thing staring back was the unsettling silence of the house. She ventured outside, hoping to find the neighbors a tad less odd than their distant looks and curt words suggested. "Have you met Mrs. Harriet?" one finally muttered, shoving a finger toward a crooked cottage further down the street. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With a knot of anxiety swirling in her stomach, Sarah knocked on the door of Mrs. Harriet. The old woman opened it, her eyes gleaming with secrets and unspeakable memories. "Ah, you're from the old house, aren't you?" she said cryptically, as if she had been waiting for Sarah's arrival. Her stories of the previous occupant, a woman who vanished without a trace, sent icy tendrils creeping up Sarah's spine. Feeling the weight of this new burden, she returned home, where shadows shifted and whispered truths she wasn't ready to face. Then, in the dim light of the basement, she found the hidden door. It creaked open to reveal a small cellar, thick with dust and memories that had rotted in silence. Old photographs, newspapers, and cracked dolls loomed like ghosts bound to a tragedy never fully spoken. The air felt heavy as she explored this cursed room, revealing the darkness woven into the very fabric of her new home. Suddenly, Jake's fearful voice called out to her. "Mom, Charlie says you need to listen." Panic surged as she dashed upstairs, her heart pounding with dread. The shadows thickened around her as she approached the hallway. It was suffocating, the air charged with an electric tension. She could almost hear the house exhale. It was waiting, ready to show her its terrible truth. Who could she trust in this labyrinth of horror, where echoes of her past collided with whispers from beyond? Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she rounded the corner, the dim light flickering overhead like a candle about to extinguish. "Jake," she called, but the shadows swallowed her voice, leaving only silence. Her heart raced, pounding against her ribcage as she pushed the door open wider. The familiar living room, once full of life, felt wrong, distorted. Shadows slithered along the walls, warping the edges of her vision. And there stood Jake, his small frame silhouetted against the eerie backdrop. "Mom, Charlie is mad," he said softly, his voice trembling. His usual playfulness was gone, replaced by something dark that seeped into the very air around them. "He says you don't believe him." "Believe what, sweetheart?" She took a cautious step forward, eyes locked onto her son's anxious face. The air grew heavy, suffocating her attempt to maintain composure. Jake's eyes were wide, glimmering with fear. "He wants you to see," Jake whispered, pointing toward the basement door, now ajar behind her. Something stirred within Sarah. A primordial instinct to flee tugged at her limbs. But she was rooted, compelled to understand the cryptic message. "What does he want me to see?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Suddenly, a breeze swept through the room, chilling her to the bone. The faint scent of decay wafted around her, mixing with the unease slowly creeping up her spine. The memories of the old woman and the untold horrors of the last family surged into her mind like a wave crashing against the shore. Was Charlie one of them? "Come on, Mom." Jake grabbed her hand, his grip strangely tight for such a small boy. "Yes, waiting." With a gasp, she followed Jake toward the basement door, their feet whispering against the wooden floor as they descended into the shadows. Each step felt heavier, the air thickening with looming dread. Then, a low murmur echoed through the walls, words indistinguishable but filled with an undercurrent of malice. The basement was just as she left it, dusty and cluttered with forgotten remnants. But something was different now. The air buzzed, alive with an energy she couldn't comprehend, dark and bitter. "Over there," Jake said, pointing towards a dim corner where her gaze fell upon a small mirror, nearly buried beneath cobwebs and debris. It had an antique frame, gracefully crafted but tarnished with age. "Mom," he says, "look in the mirror." Jake pressed, nudging her forward. The boy's voice trembled, the excitement fading into something primal. A shiver raced through her as she reached for the mirror. The surface was clouded, a tarnished window to the past that begged to be wiped clean. With a ragged breath, she cleared the surface with her sleeve. As her reflection slowly appeared, it showed not just her own face, but flickers of other lives' faces of anguish, eyes pleading for salvation. "Charlie," she murmured, her stomach turning. Suddenly, the room erupted into chaos. The air crackled, shadows slashing through the faint light, twisting and contorting around them. "Mom!" Jake screamed, fear wrapping around his body like a shroud. And just as quickly as it began, the chaos stopped. The mirror, now fully uncovered, reflected a figure standing in the dark behind her. A tall silhouette shrouded in darkness, its eyes burning like embers, while rose in her throat as she spun around. But the shadow was already gone, evaporating into the cracks of the house. "What was that?" Jake's voice quaked as he clung tightly to her side. I don't know," she stammered, the cold press of fear squeezing her chest. They were not alone. She could feel it, a presence watching them, eager and hungry as the dread settled in her heart. She realized the house was not merely haunted. It was alive, drawing out their darkest fears. "Mom," Jake whispered, and she could hear him tremble. "Is Charlie going to hurt us?" Her gaze returned to the mirror. There, the figure shifted again, and she could have sworn it locked eyes with her unknowing gaze. It wanted something from her. But what? Was it her past, pleading for release? Or was it bound to this house, ready to ensnare them both? With the darkness closing in, she felt a shiver run down her spine. There was so much more to discover. So many secrets the house hid beneath its creaking floors. And time was running out. As her heart pounded in her ears, Sarah took a step forward, unsure of the truth she was about to unveil. What was she really willing to sacrifice for her children's safety? The darkness whispered back, and the house seemed to watch her with eager anticipation. The air thickened, wrapping around Sarah like an oppressive weight. She glanced at Jake, the wide-eyed innocence of her son smeared with dread. "We'll figure this out together," she whispered, more for her own reassurance than his that as they stood amid the debris. The mirror pulsed with a low hum, a sound that seeped into her bones. Shadows flickered, and the dusty basement felt like a living thing, breathing in tandem with her rising panic. Tension coiled in her stomach, twisting tighter with each heartbeat. "Let us look again," Jake urged, his grip tightening around her wrist. Sarah hesitated. What if the mirror pulled them in? A profound instinct screamed at her to turn back, to flee from whatever darkness lay entwined in that cursed frame. But Jake's fear channeled her own into determination. She couldn't let her son see her falter. She stepped closer to the mirror, locking her eyes onto its surface. The faces behind her reflection moved like a shrouded gallery of souls twisted, forlorn, and crying out without uttering a word. Each face bore witness to an unending torment, as if having stared too long into the heart of despair. A gnawing dread took hold. "Who are you?" she whispered, desperate for answers. No reply came from the glass, only the chilling sense that something was shifting something in the space behind her. In the house itself, a scraping sound echoed from deep within the basement. A low, relentless sound that seeped into her brain like cold sweat. Sarah turned with a jolt, peering into the darkness at the far end. "Jake, do you hear that?" Jake nodded, trembling as he edged closer to her side. The scraping grew louder, a rhythm matching the frantic pace of her heart. It clawed at the walls of the house, threatening to break free. "Mom?" His voice cracked, echoing her fear. "What's happening?" Without thinking, she grabbed Jake's hand and pulled him away from the mirror. "We need to go." But the basement door slammed shut behind them with a deafening thud, leaving them in an inescapable void. Her pulse raced as the warmth of the basement vanished, plunging them deeper into shadows intertwined with the scent of mold and rot. Panic flooded her senses, but she fought to hold on to clarity. "Stay close, Jake," she urged, moving through the darkness, feeling the walls closing in. The scraping had become a guttural growl, reverberating through her very being. Then, from the abyss, a voice emerged, twisted and echoing, calling to her from the corners of her mind. "Sarah, let me show you." It beckoned, slithering around her thoughts like smoke. "All your secrets." Her breath quickened, the weight of the words pressing down on her. Secrets, what secrets? She had nothing to hide, yet the house dug deeper, stirring memories long buried. Images of loss and guilt spiraled into her mind, memories she thought she had buried beneath layers of years. The lights flickered, then dimmed, leaving them in an inky blackness. In that moment, Sarah felt the sharp corner of something tangling with her arms, trying to pull her back, breaking the tether of her hope. "Run, Jake," she yelled, thrusting forward, aiming for the deadened door. They crashed into it, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers grew louder, swirling like a storm. "You brought them here. You must let them go." Cold fear washed over her. Was the house trying to take them? She shoved against the door, desperation igniting her strength. "This ends now." With a final burst of energy, she pressed against the door. It groaned, resisting, but she pushed harder. The sound of the scraping grew frenzied behind them. Then, just as hope shimmered on the horizon, the door splintered and opened into thick, creeping darkness that yawned before them like the mouth of a beast. "Mom, I don't want to go in," Jake whimpered, tears glimmering in his wide eyes. "Neither do I," she admitted, voice barely steady. "But we have to find a way out." As they stepped into the murky unknown, the whispers faded, replaced with a chilling laughter that caressed her spine. In that moment, she felt it, the darkness was hunting them, and it wouldn't stop until it found what it wanted. What lay at the heart of the house, and how far would they have to venture into the shadows to survive? With fate tightening its grip, they stumbled further into the abyss, unaware of the horrors waiting just beyond their vision, poised to claim them. The darkness swallowed them whole. It pressed against Sarah's skin, squeezing tight until she felt as if the air itself had been forced out of her lungs. Goosebumps chased down her arms like tiny fingers, and she clutched Jake's hand even tighter, as if he might slip away into the void. "Keep your eyes on me," she urged through gritted teeth, the sound of her own voice barely echoing back to her. The shadows shifted around them, strange shapes pulsing and swirling like mist. Suddenly, a loud thud resonated around them. Sarah jumped, heart racing. "What was that?" Jake hissed, pressing against her side. "I don't know," she stammered, every instinct screaming for them to turn back. But there was no going back now, was there? They were already in too deep. As if in response to her thoughts, the darkness began to move. It rippled with unnatural life, coiling and uncoiling, stretching outwards to greet them, closing in around their feet like hungry serpents. With each claustrophobic slice of silence, she could feel her sanity starting to fray. Mom Jake's whisper shattered her remaining resolve. "I'm scared." "Me too, buddy," she murmured, fighting against the tears threatening to spill down her cheeks. "But we have to stay strong. We'll find a way out." It felt hollow, her own words echoing back at her, but she had to believe it. They pressed forward into the inky blackness, moving slowly, careful not to disturb the unseen ground beneath their feet. The bottom of the basement seemed to pulse with a life of its own, a rhythm that clawed at Sarah's mind and filled her with doubt. Then, as they turned a corner, they stumbled upon something that froze them in place. A figure, illuminated by an eerie glow, stood before them. It was a woman, her spectral form wavering like smoke, eyes hollowed and sunken, a visage twisted with anguish that sent a crippling shiver through Sarah's core. "Help!" The woman's voice dripped with desperation, echoing in a haunting melody that danced on the edge of Sarah's sanity. "You have to help before it's too late. Who are you?" Sarah's voice trembled, her grip on Jake tightening, the fabric of her bravado beginning to unravel. But the woman merely pointed deeper into the darkness. "The mirror," she gasped, her words joining the whispers in the air, swirling with ominous intent. "It shows the truth, your truth." "I don't understand," Sarah cried, stepping back, but the woman merely continued her haunting gaze, her thin lips curling into a sickly smile. "Let it." In the voice faded, fading into the suffocating silence that surrounded them. There was a jolt, a sudden surge of dread that sank deep in Sarah's chest. "We shouldn't trust it, Jake. We can't." But doubt snaked its way into her thoughts. What if the mirror held the key? What if facing whatever truths lay hidden was the only chance to escape for both of them? Jake's eyes flicked nervously between his mother and the specter. "Mom, I think we have to follow her." The thought of plunging into more darkness made her stomach churn. "No, Jake. We will find another way. We can't trust what we can't see." Jake's innocent face clouded with uncertainty. But what if she's trying to help us? With that uncertainty hanging heavy between them, Sarah made a decision. "Okay, but we have to stay together." She took a step toward the figure, who gestured with ghostly fingers, urging them deeper into the shadows as they ventured forward. The whispers crescendoed into a cacophony, drowning out her thoughts, nearly pushing Sarah to her knees. They were closing in, their secrets wanting to be freed. "Please," the spectral figure urged. "Show me your truth and set them free." The ground beneath them shuddered, and an ancient rumble echoed through the dark. Fear crackled in the air, filling every crevice of her mind. What truth was she hiding? What was this darkness pulling from her? In a moment of fear-driven clarity, Sarah realized they were not just here to find a way out. They were being hunted for something far more sinister than escape. With heavy breaths and dread pooling in her gut, she felt the pull of the house intensifying, a silent promise of revelation and terror. They had to act, but how could they face what waited in the fractured mirror's heart? And as the laughter began once more, deep and rumbling, echoing all around them, one terrifying question trembled on her lips. What would they uncover if they gazed into the truth? As if in answer, the flicker of light from the spectral woman further beckoned them onward, deeper into the unknown. The shadows deepened, swallowing every trace of light as they stepped further into the abyss, following the female specter. Each footfall sent shivers down Sarah's spine, the urge to flee clawing at her insides, but a tighter grip from Jake anchored her resolve. They moved as one, the boy's quiet breaths a reminder of what they were fighting for. "Mom," Jake whispered, his voice barely a thread against the whirl of noises that surrounded them. What if she leads us into like a trap?" "Maybe," Sarah admitted, her heart pounding. "But we don't have many choices left. Not out here." The suffocating echoes of their surroundings only amplified her dread. The darkness wasn't just black. It was alive, pulsing with a torment that felt almost palpable. She could sense the weight of unseen eyes watching, waiting. The specter halted, pointing towards a glimmering light that flickered on the ground. A surface, smooth yet fractured, reflected back the dim glow. It was a mirror set in the earth like a portal. Visions skittered across its surface, images of a house decorated for Christmas long ago. Laughter, the soft glow of candlelight, and then trails of red against the pale white walls. No, Sarah gasped, her skin prickling with memories. They were images of her past, moments snatched from a time when every joy was followed by the unimaginable. Jake, look away. But it was too late. Jake, entranced, leaned closer. Mom, is that us? His innocent gaze was fixed on the reflection, the mirrored laughter twisting into a taunting smirk of malice that rippled like a poisoned wave. It was no longer a memory but an entangling nightmare, reaching out like writhing tendrils. The spectral woman's features twisted as if caught between two worlds, her form becoming more defined, her mouth a gaping maw. "Show me your truth," she shrieked, the sound reverberating through the dark, breaking the fragile hold Sarah had on her sanity. "Jake, we have to go. Now." Panic surged through her veins like wildfire. She grabbed Jake, pulling him back just as the reflection began to bubble and warp, images clawing at the surface as if desperate to escape. The mirror shimmered, the surreal landscape morphing into grotesque forms. Things that should not exist, all of them shouting for release. "Mom, I'm scared," Jake screamed, his voice mixing with the ghastly wails pouring from the mirror, each word heavier than the last. "We can't look. Fight it, Jake." She yanked him towards the specter, hoping some shred of it might be kinder than the visage in the glass. But something shifted. The house groaned, echoing their fear. The air thickened with a sickly sweetness, a familiar scent that tugged at memories buried deep within Sarah's mind. Home, no, that was long gone. The ground jumped beneath them. Tendrils of shadow lunged at their feet, wrapping around their ankles as they struggled. "Why are you here?" The whispering darkness hissed. "You belong to us now." Sarah felt the darkness seep into her skin, teasing her fingertips, taunting her. "This isn't our home," she shouted to the void, trying to claw her way back to the surface. But the more she fought, the more the shadows clung and constricted. "Mom!" Jake tugged at her, eyes wide with terror. "The mirror, it's showing me something." Against her will, Sarah's eyes darted back to the mirror, where images kept shifting, a childhood never known, a future stolen. Words clung to her throat, the answers she sought lurking just out of reach. What lay within that mirror was more than any darkness. It was her own truth. But could she face it? As the laughter rose into a deafening crescendo, drowning out everything else, she realized they stood at a precipice. She hesitated. Could she bear to look? With just a moment left, the phantom figure faded, leaving only the mirror's pull and the chaos swirling around them. And in the midst of despair, one question ignited the air. Would the truth set them free or consume them whole? Sarah's heart pounded as the shrieking laughter dissolved into an eerie silence. The mirror shimmered, its surface a vortex, drowning out her thoughts. She had a sinking feeling that they could not stay here, not another breath. With a sharp tug, she pulled Jake away from the cursed reflection, ramming her shoulder blindly against the heavy shadows that pressed in on them. "Keep your eyes on me, Jake," she urged, not daring to look back. The boy nodded, his face pale and taut with fear as they stumbled deeper into the darkness. The laments of the past felt closer than ever. Shadows twisted around them, whispering secrets that seeped into Sarah's bones. Their voices blended into a menacing symphony. "Stay, come back," they beckoned. "Don't listen," she shouted, her voice cracking as the air thickened. She felt as if the darkness was drawing a breath, preparing to strike. Her grip tightened on Jake's hand, and they surged forward, pushing against the oppressive air. But the specter was not done with them yet. A cacophony erupted behind them, the sound of shattering glass, as if the mirror had exploded. Sarah risked a glance back. In the place of the glass, a dark fissure opened, breathing out tendrils of oily smoke that writhed and coiled. Sarcasm mixed with malice dripped from the blackness, pooling at their feet. "Your truth will find you," the voice slithered, the echoes dragging through her like icy fingers. The threat twisted her stomach, but there was no time to falter. Suddenly, the ground beneath them began to tremble, and the realm around the fissure pulsed and contracted like the heart of a beast. "Run!" Sarah screamed, yanking Jake behind her as they sped down a corridor of doom. The world felt unstable, warping around their racing bodies as they navigated the ever-changing landscape of shadows. "Mom, my legs!" Jake cried, his small frame beginning to slow as exhaustion clawed at him. Just a little further. Fear twisted in Sarah's gut as she spotted a faint glow in the distance. Determination surged through her veins. Whatever the truth was, they would face it together. But as they neared the light, hope turned to horror. There stood another mirror. Its frame twisted grotesquely, and its reflections were nothing but blackened, screaming faces. "Please join us," they howled, their eyes brimming with unfathomable pain. "No, we want tea," Sarah shouted, wanting to shield Jake from the horror. But Jake's curious eyes were drawn towards the gruesome display. "Jake, look away." She pushed him behind her, shielding him from the rancid visions. But helmed by the dark energy, shadows uncoiled around her ankles, dragging her closer. "Mom, it's hurting you," Jake screamed, terror breaking through his voice. "Do not let go," Sarah shouted, her heart racing with an urgency she had never known. In that moment, the mirror began to resonate with a low hum. The distortion of time warped their senses, blurring past and future. Sarah felt memories collide, errant flashes of forgotten laughter pulsing against the foreboding darkness. "Your truth is your darkness," it whispered again, wrapping around her like a shroud. "No!" A primal scream erupted from her throat. She twisted in a desperate attempt to break free from the grasping shadows, dragging Jake with her. And in that second, as if sensing their defiance, the mirror cracked, luminous shards exploding outward. A blinding light enveloped them, spreading warmth that tingled against Sarah's skin. But as quickly as it arrived, the light dimmed, leaving them breathless in a space that held its breath with them. Where were they now? And had they escaped or simply entered another prison? Suddenly, a shiver of cold clawed at Sarah's back, the whispering voices returning, more insistent than before. Welcome back. What had they truly released? And what awaited them in the dark? The truth was still out there, lurking in the shadows, a beast biding its time. The air felt thick and cold, wrapping around Sarah and Jake like a suffocating blanket. They stood in a dimly lit room, the walls shifting like shadows, pulsating gently as if the space itself were alive, breathing with a malevolent energy. A single flickering light bulb hung from the ceiling, casting wraith-like shapes across the room. "Where are we?" Jake whispered, his voice trembling. "I don't know, sweetheart," Sarah replied, straining to keep panic from her voice. The room smelled of dampness and rot, a stench that clawed at her throat. She held Jake closer, her heart racing. "Stay close." The cold deepened, biting into her skin. She scanned the room, searching for anything familiar. There were no windows, just a locked door that loomed at the far end, half concealed by shadows. The walls were covered with appealing wallpaper that looked like it had seen better days decades before. Muffled whispers drifted through the air, familiar yet twisted, giving voice to the ghosts that lingered in the corners. "Do you hear that?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake nodded, his small body trembling against hers. "They're sad, let us not listen." She squeezed his hand tighter, trying to drown out the haunting sounds. The whispers transformed into a cacophony, each voice rising and falling in a rhythm that sent shivers down her spine. "We need to find a way out. Follow me." With hesitant steps, they moved toward the door, but as they approached, the whispers swelled into a wailing chorus. "Don't leave. Stay with us," the voices called out, a mix of desperation and allure that chilled Sarah to the bone. She gripped the doorknob and twisted. It wouldn't budge. "Jake, help me." He stepped forward, his small hands trembling as he pulled against the door. "It won't open, Mom." Grief washed over her, mingling with rage. Fear wasn't a stranger, not anymore. Striking the door with a newfound determination, she shouted, "Let us out." The wails grew shriller, morphed into screams of torment that ricocheted around the room, suffocating her with their intensity. Sarah slammed her fists against the wood, a primal urge to escape rising within her. Then, like a needle breaking the surface of silence, the door creaked open, as if it had been waiting to be freed. But when the door swung wide, a pit of blackness loomed beyond. It wasn't just empty space. It pulsed with an energy that felt wrong, like a darkness hungry for light. "Mom, I'm scared." Jake clutched her tightly, his eyes wide with terror. "I know," she whispered, mustering courage she didn't feel. "But we have to move, Jake. We can't stay here." As she stepped into the void, a wave of freezing air swept through them, pulling Jake towards the blackness. "No." She grabbed hold of him, her voice a fierce scream in the deafening silence. Just then, the whispers shifted from a mournful plea to shrieks of laughter, joyous yet sinister. "You can't run from your truth. It will find you." The darkness surged forward, tendrils stretching like fingers, reaching for them. She pulled Jake back, stumbling into the room. The door slammed shut, forcing them back into the dim light. The laughter faded, but not before two cruel eyes glinted from the shadows, filled with knowing malice. "What do we do now?" Jake's voice was small, a child lost in a terrifying world. Sarah's gut twisted in anguish. "We face it together." Her voice wavered, but she locked eyes with her son, a fierce resolve igniting within her. But before she could gather her thoughts, the walls began to whisper again, taunting. "Your truth is your prison." What did that mean? As dread clawed at her throat, another door appeared on the opposite side of the room, a door that hadn't been there before. "Mom, let us go," Jake urged, his eyes filled with something that resembled hope. She hesitated, fear wrestling with a flicker of instinct. What awaited them on the other side? And could that door offer the freedom they desperately sought, or would it lead them deeper into the abyss? With one last glance at her son, Sarah took a breath. "Let us find out." As they stepped closer, the darkness shivered in anticipation, and a chilling wind swept through the room, carrying the echoes of all those who had come before them. The truth was still out there, lurking just beyond the door, ready to be revealed. The moment Sarah grasped the cold, rusted doorknob, a surge of uncertainty rippled through her. The air thickened once more, stifling her breath as shadows danced wildly across the walls. Something felt off, like a million eyes watching them, waiting to see what would happen next. She turned to Jake, who stood rooted in place, eyes wide with a blend of fear and yearning, as if drawn to the unknown beyond. "Stay behind me," she urged, tightening her grip on his small hand. The pressure of her anxiety was palpable. She stepped forward, pushing the door open with a creaking protest that seemed to echo their deepest fears. A dark hallway extended before them, the flickering light behind them fading into nothingness. "Mom," Jake's voice trembled, dragging her attention back. "Just keep moving," she whispered, crossing the threshold. The chill multiplied, wrapping around them like icy tendrils. The hallway loomed ahead, endless and uninviting. With each step, the floor creaked beneath their feet, ominous and unsettled. The walls were lined with faded portraits, their subjects' distorted faces twisted into expressions of despair. It felt like they were trapped in a museum of sorrow, each frame a window into a fragmented existence. Sarah could hear whispers again, echoing in her mind, pulling her, tempting her with fragmented tales of those who had walked this path before, stories of pain, loss, and failures best left forgotten. "Mom," Jake whimpered. "We're okay, Jake. We're okay," she murmured, forcing warmth into her voice. But a sense of foreboding twisted in her gut. She glanced sideways at the portraits, uneasy, as the dim light flashed across their melancholic faces. Were they watching? Were they the last remnants of souls caught in this darkness? As they moved deeper, the hallway seemed to close in. The air felt heavier, burdened with the weight of their secrets. Sarah's skin prickled with paranoia. What were they walking into? Without warning, a gust of wind swept through, extinguishing the light in the corridor. Panic surged through her as darkness enveloped them. She fumbled for Jake's hand, her heart pounding. "Jake, I'm here," his small voice answered, trembling with fear. She found him, clutching his arm, desperation coursing through her. Then, from the shadows, a low, haunting laugh reverberated. It echoed against the walls, taunting, haunting. "You think you can escape?" Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "We have to go back." She pushed against him, retracing their steps. But there was no door now, no way back. Just the oppressive darkness closing in on them. "Mom, I don't want to be here," Jake cried out, voice trembling. I know," she choked out. She squeezed his hand tight, her knuckles white. "But we have to find a way." A flicker of light pierced the thick shadows ahead. Sarah squinted, heart racing with a glimmer of hope. They ran toward it, the laughter diminishing, replaced with a chorus of whispers that swirled around them like ghostly fingers, reaching for their ankles. "Your truth is a burden," the whispers chanted, echoing through the corridor. Sarah dug deep, determined not to acknowledge that desperate collision of fear and knowledge. Just as they reached the light, another door loomed, a heavy wooden door adorned with grotesque carvings. The handle was shimmering, almost inviting. "Mom, what if it's worse?" Jake's voice quivered, his fear a mirror to her own. "We have to know," she whispered, heart racing wildly. There was no other choice. She pressed her palm against the door, and it swung open slowly, revealing a room bathed in a deep crimson light. And there, in the center, a mirror stood, dark and ancient. Its surface rippled like water, reflecting not only their images but their innermost fears and regrets. "What is that?" Jake breathed, gaze fixed on the mirror, wide-eyed with terror. "Jake, don't look into it," Sarah warned too late. He stepped forward, mesmerized, crossing the threshold between light and shadow. "No," she screamed, but it was too late. A blinding flash engulfed them both, and the world as she knew it disintegrated in the depth of the mirror. A shadow loomed, larger than life, its form twisting as if made of the very darkness they had fled. A voice emerged from the depths, resonating through her bones. "Welcome, Sarah. Are you ready to face the truth?" The words slashed through her like ice, rooted her in fear. She could no longer distinguish between truth and lie. All she knew was that they were on the brink of something terrible. "Jake!" she cried out in desperation. Her scream swallowed by the darkness as the mirror beckoned them closer. The flash of light faded as Sarah blinked against the heaviness of the darkness that enveloped her. A surreal haze clouded her thoughts. Reality seemed to twist like the figures in the mirror. She could feel the cold grip of fear tightening around her heart. Where was Jake? Panic surged like wildfire through her veins. "Jake!" she shouted, her voice echoing into the void. The silence that answered was deafening. She reached out, grappling in the blackness, feeling for any sign of him. The air was thick, suffocating. Every passing moment seemed to stretch into eternity. Her mind raced with the dreadful possibilities, visions of what could have happened to him. Was he trapped behind that cursed glass? Suddenly, from within the gloom, a soft whimper pierced the silence. "Mom?" It was faint, but unmistakably Jake. Relief flooded her, but it was quickly suffocated by the shadows. "Jake, where are you?" "Right here," he called, the sound echoing from somewhere close but still beyond her reach. "I can't see you." "Stay there. I'm coming." But each step felt like wading through molasses. She felt as if something cold and spectral was circling her, waiting to snare her in its grasp. The whispers returned, snaking through the air like serpents. "Your truth is a burden. Let it go." They slithered into her ears, chilling and seductive, wrapping around her mind. She shook her head, trying to expel them, but they burrowed deeper, their rhythm growing more insistent. "Mom, I'm scared." Jake's voice trembled again. I know. Just hold on." As she shouted, a faint light flickered, revealing the edges of the mirror once more. Sarah reached her hand toward the glimmer, desperate to find Jake's face reflected there. But instead of her son, she saw fragmented images, flashes of her life, moments she buried deep beneath the surface. The arguments, the regret, the time spent running from the truth about her past. "Stop it," she screamed, but the mirror seemed to glimmer back with a life of its own, teasing her with betrayal and despair. "Let them in," the voice whispered seductively. "All you must do is surrender." "No," she shouted, grasping her head as if trying to hold her sanity in place. She turned away from the mirror's haunting embrace, forcing herself to listen for Jake. The weight of her dread pressed down harder as her heart raced. She couldn't allow the shadows to consume him. "Mom, I can't hold on." Jake's voice splintered through the dark. "I'm coming." She fought to push through the oppressive air, stumbling as she went. The shadows retreated ever so slightly, sensing her determination. With renewed resolve, Sarah pressed through the whispering darkness, hand outstretched, praying she would find him. The echoing thud of her heart filled her ears, each beat a countdown. The din died away, replaced by a frantic rustling, and there a flicker of movement to her left. "Jake!" she called again, and to her shock, she felt a tiny hand grasp hers, brittle and trembling. "I thought I lost you." Tears prickled in her eyes as tightness swelled in her chest. "I'm scared, Mom," he whispered, small voice tinged with dread. "We'll get out, I promise." She squeezed his hand tighter. But just as those words left her lips, the room warped around them, reality shifting like fog. The mirror loomed larger behind them, and the whispers crescendoed into a cacophony of agony. "Face your truth," the voice thundered, shaking the floor beneath them. "No, we won, Sarah shouted, dragging Jake away from the mirror's pull, feeling their surroundings fracture and twist in response to her defiance. Ahead, the shadows thinned momentarily, revealing a faint light beyond an exit. "Run." She pulled Jake close and took off, heart pounding, blood roaring in her ears. The whispers clawed at her back, desperate to pull them into the depth of despair. The light shone brighter, and just as they reached out toward it, a chilling force ripped through the air, stopping them in their tracks. "Your truth waits," Sarah the voice echoed, impossibly near. Their fingers brushed against the threshold of light as a new voice whispered from the mirror, a sinister invitation. "Would you like to see what you've lost?" As darkness exploded around them, Sarah realized they were lost in a path from which they may never return. "Jake!" she screamed, but the shadows were swallowing him whole. And just like that, everything went black. What would they find on the other side? Would they ever escape the clutches of the mirror? Sarah's heart pounded ferociously in her chest as she felt the darkness close in around them. The echoes of whispers still taunted her, laced with the despair of the souls trapped within the walls of the house. She stood frozen for a moment, heart racing, as shadows swirled around her legs, pulling at her ankles like hungry tides. But then Jake's small hand tugged fiercely at hers, breaking through the suffocating static. In that moment, she felt the fierce love of a mother ignite within her. "Stay close," she urged, her voice stronger now, much louder than the whispers. "We're getting out of this together." Together, they dashed toward the flickering light ahead. Every sprint was invigorating and terrifying, filled with a sense of urgency that filled the very air with electric tension. The door they had fought against was growing nearer, the whispers behind them becoming frantic. "Don't leave. You belong to us," they cried, their voices rising into a haunting choir. "Keep running," she shouted back defiantly, a surge of adrenaline propelling their legs faster. They breached the threshold of light, feeling its warmth envelop them. For a brief moment, the screams faded behind them, replaced by a stillness that echoed. And just as they thought salvation was truly at hand, another unseen force gripped Sarah's heart, almost choking her with a chilling embrace. The shadows flickered behind them, swirling erratically as if searching for a way in. "You cannot escape your truth," the haunting voice roared, shaking her to her core. "Mom!" Jake cried, flashing her a fearful look. "What do we do? This is our moment. We face it together," she answered, summoning every ounce of strength she had. Close to the door now, she felt the outline cold and firm. As they tumbled through the threshold, a wave of foreboding washed over them. They landed on the other side, breathless and trembling, but alive still together. They found themselves back in the basement, but it was different now. The mirror stood before them, untouched, waiting. The shadows receded, momentarily disoriented. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath in anticipation. "Jake, do you see?" Sarah whispered, eyes locked onto the mirror. It no longer held the chaotic whirlwind of darkness. Instead, its surface shimmered with a glimmer of hope, revealing not just their reflections but remnants of their past fond memories, woven together in honesty. The laughter of family, the warmth of bonds unbroken. "Mom, it's changed." Jake breathed, eyes wide in wonder. She stepped closer, compelled to look deeper, finally ready to confront the truth that had haunted her for too long. "Every wound, every scar makes us who we are," she murmured more to herself than to her son. The truth bound them, both anguish and joy tangled together. "Charlie," Jake suddenly exclaimed, pulling back Sarah's attention at the joyous name. The whispers quieted as memories of the boy Jake called his friend swirled within the mirror. "Charlie," Sarah repeated softly, the name echoing shreds of fear. An image rippled, and there he was, the boy she had sensed all along, smiling brightly. "We're here to help," he called, his voice vibrant, jubilant. A flicker of understanding dawned on Sarah. Charlie was not a malicious spirit. He was an innocent lost, just like them. "You can free us. Trust in each other." Charlie smiled, pointing back to the mirror. "Face what it truly means to love and protect. It's the only way." Together, Jake said resolutely. Grabbing each other's hands, they steadied themselves before the mirror. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as warmth surged through her, illuminating their shadows from the inside out. "Let us do this," she whispered, heart pounding with newfound clarity. Taking a deep breath, they stepped forward into the mirror, feeling energy pulse around them. The darkness quivered and the house shuddered. It could no longer hold its victims. The truth was breaking free like a bird from its cage. "No!" The shrieks of despair clawed at them, but they stood resolute, love fueling their every heartbeat. And as they dove into the depths of themselves, the darkness fractured, revealing the full light of their moments, their fears banished, their burdens shared and resolved. Suddenly, they were out. In a flicker of a heartbeat, they blinked away the shadows, emerging outside in the warm sunlight of their backyard. The air was fresh and inviting, and everything felt alive again. They stood together, Jake's little hand still anchored within hers, illuminated with a feeling new to them both, a profound sense of freedom. The house stood silent now behind them, faint echoes of its past fading into whispers of surrender. Did we do it?" Jake asked, eyes bright with hope. Sarah looked down into his trusting gaze, reveling in a relief she had only longed for. "Yes, sweetheart, we did." The chains of their past drifted off into the sunset, eclipsed by the promise of tomorrow. And in that moment, Sarah knew they could finally move forward together. "Let us go inside," she said softly, with warmth wrapping around them like a secure embrace. With lingering caution but renewed hope, they walked hand in hand towards a new journey, one full of light, laughter, and the truth that could no longer haunt them. And if you enjoyed this chilling tale, you need to subscribe now so you don't miss the exclusive stories coming next. Smash the like button now to show your love and get us on the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories. Your reactions matter. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need a dose of this conclusion. Your support makes all the difference.